Okay, everybody, welcome back. We'll get started with our first guest speaker for eXL 2022. Dr. Alma Gonzalez is the founder and director of STRATHA Learning Corporation, a global talent development firm. Alma holds a Ph.D. in strategic studies from the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, a Master of Science in Educational Management and Development from the Instituto Politécnico Nacional in Mexico, and is a certified professional in talent development, transforming advanced scientific discoveries into practical knowledge and skills that maximize human potential. Alma uses her research-based expertise to create innovative development solutions for adults and older adult learners. Alma has been fully immersed in the adult learning and development ecosystem for over 10 years, working with individuals, corporations, governments, and higher education institutions around the world, helping them enhance performance and achieve extraordinary results. As a reminder to all of our attendees, this conference is being recorded. We will have our Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please use the Q&A tool if you have a question for the speaker. The stage is all yours, Dr. Gonzalez. Please share your content and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you for sharing this virtual space. And the topic that I will talk about today is experiential learning for older adults, the challenges and opportunities ahead. As you mentioned, as Olivia mentioned, I've been in the learning and development ecosystem for the last 10 years, mainly in corporate training, developing skills in various areas, from strategic management and technology management to communication skills and soft skills. And recently, I've noticed a trend. And this trend is that my learners are getting older. People are retiring later in life. Some people are refusing to retire. They don't want to leave the workplace at all. And those who do retire want to continue working or learning after retirement. And this is hardly surprising. Why? Because we are right now in the midst of a great demographic shift. And this shift is that the global population is aging very, very rapidly. And this, of course, poses many, many challenges in all areas of human life and social interaction. Economics, politics, and of course, education and learning are no exceptions. And I was reflecting about this phenomenon, and I thought that we as trainers, educators, learners have to start thinking about solutions to address this challenge. We need to start thinking about our roles as educators in this new demographic context, because if you are a trainer or an education enthusiast, you will soon find out and that you'll encounter older learners. And if you are a learner, well, you'll notice that you are getting older, and as you age, your needs change. The way you learn also changes. And today, I want to talk about what we can do about this. So I have a very modest objective. My objective is to generate awareness of the importance of accounting for older adults' needs in experiential learning initiatives. As I share my content with you, I encourage you to think about how it applies to your individual situations, your learning and working context. And if you're just a learner, think about how these elements of senior learning can help you become a lifelong learning in an effective and productive way. So this is the agenda that I have for you today. First, I will emphasize why it's so important to start thinking about addressing the challenge of older adult learning, in particular in the context of experiential learning. Regardless of our field of expertise, we all will be immersed in this new demographic context, and we therefore need to acquire these tools. Then I will elaborate on the difference between traditional adult learning theory and older adult learning. What's the big deal? Why should we devote our time and energy to learn about the needs of older adult learners? What's the difference? After that, I'll talk about experiential learning for older adults, the characteristics and the key elements that we need to take into account to be effective educators of older adults. And finally, I'll provide some actionable insights so that we can get ready now for this future that is actually already here, for this great 21st century demographic transformation. Because if there is something that we can be sure about, is that regardless of our area of education that we address, we all will encounter older adult learners in our groups, in our classes, in our workplaces, in our contexts. That's unavoidable. We cannot change the demographic trend, but we can take action to change the outcomes so that they can be as positive as possible. So let's start with the first section of this talk. Why it matters? Well, essentially, it matters because we are getting older. And this is quite obvious. Since the day we were born, we are getting older every single day, and that will not change regardless of what we do. But what's different now is that the global population itself is also getting older. Currently, 7%, right now in 2022, 7% of the world's population is 65 years or older, right? But by 2050, the percentage will increase to 20%. That represents 1.6 billion people, and it will just keep increasing from there onwards. So yes, at an individual level, we are getting older, but the world as a whole, the global population is aging as well. What are the implications for our educational systems, for our training methodologies, for our learning technologies? How can they be adapted to meet the needs of this population segment? That's what we really need to start thinking about. Because if we are talking about experiential learning for all, we cannot avoid addressing the requirements of this increasingly important group of population. Now, here on this graph, we can see the trend more clearly. We can appreciate it better. Here in the 1950s, you can see that the global population was shaped in a pyramid form. You know, the vast majority of the population was young. Then in the 2010s, you know, we can see how the world is getting older. And here in the 2050s, the global projection, it doesn't look like a pyramid anymore. Now it looks more like a muffin, right? Why? Because older groups are getting bigger. Why is that said? Well, because fertility rates are decreasing globally, and fortunately, we are living longer, healthier, better lives, right? Of course, we face still lots of problems around the world. There are areas in which poverty is predominant and people still die very young, but globally, on average, we're living longer, healthier, and better. So that's it. You can see here the projection for the year 2010. Still, you know, older adults will keep being larger portions of the population, will be living longer. And this is one of the greatest transformations of the 21st century. As I mentioned already, it will generate changes in all areas of human existence, and we won't change it. But the key message here is that we need to get ready now for this demographic transformation as educators, as trainers, as technologists, but also as learners, because we will be part, hopefully, we will be part of this older adult population, and we want to be lifelong learners that are effective at learning at all ages in our lifespan. So let's move on to the next topic here. Why I insist so much on lifelong learning and on addressing the needs of older adults? Because it's beneficial. It's beneficial for society, and it's beneficial for individuals. First of all, the benefit is that it protects against cognitive decline. Right now, the world faces a serious health crisis. Maybe you've heard about it on the news, it's being discussed in social media, or you have a family member, or you yourself have this condition. But the fact is that as we age, the tendency is for our cognitive power to decline. And currently, 7% of adults who are 65 and above have conditions such as dementia. And the proportion increases as we age. By the time we are 85 years or older, the proportion of people with dementia is 22%. By the time we are 90 years or older, the proportion of people with dementia is 33%. Now, that's not very motivating, right? We don't want to age if that means that we are going to lose our cognitive and intellectual power. But the good news is that research has shown that this is totally avoidable. That even if right now 48 million people around the world have dementia, we don't need to continue down that path. We can change this if we take action now. Because recent discoveries in neuroscience tell us that learning and development continue to participate in training programs as older adults, protect us against this cognitive decline. So if we remain engaged in learning activities, especially in experiential, hands-on practical learning activities, we are much less likely to lose our intellectual memory and cognitive abilities. Now, that's in terms of the cognitive benefit, but also research has shown that learning enables us to be socially engaged, to stay as active members of society, and this is positively correlated with higher levels of health, well-being, productivity, and happiness. So the more you learn, the more you remain socially engaged, and the more happy you will be regardless of how old you are. Another benefit is that learning in older adulthood will enable us to remain in the workforce for longer. We will remain up to date in our professional skills, and we will be able to add value to the workforce if we decide to stay in the workforce, or if we decide to start a second career. Learning as older adults will also be very, very useful and productive. And finally, another benefit is that learning as senior learners enables us to remain financially independent. And this is increasingly important because, as retirees have found out, their retirement savings are often not enough. Portfolios are underperforming, inflation is increasing, and we are living longer than we anticipated we would, and therefore the savings might not be enough, so we may need to remain in the workforce for longer, and this will imply a constant need to upgrade our skills or to reskill to be able to perform new jobs. So as we talk about remaining in the workforce, what are the key considerations that we need to have when we learn at the workplace as older adults? Well, first of all, that it's a reality that we are working longer, either because we want to or because we have an economic need and we have to. Sometimes it's not an economic need, but it's an emotional need. Older adults may feel lonely, their self-esteem may be decreasing if they feel that they are unproductive, and they just want to add value to society, to the economy, by remaining as active workers. So that's a global trend. We are working longer regardless of the reason. In fact, 20% of seniors all over the world say that they want to work beyond retirement age, whether they need it or not. Also, 50% of older adults say that they want to continue working part-time after retirement. If they do retire, they want to continue working part-time, or they want to start new careers, to explore new horizons, new opportunities to continue developing their skills. So we as educators have a big market there. We need to address the needs of these learners. Another characteristic here is that people, senior learners, retired people, older adults, they want to maximize on their experience. They have accumulated vast amounts of experience throughout their professional careers, and they want to do something productive with this. And this implies constant experiential learning. But they have a training disadvantage. And what is the training disadvantage? Well, that we, as professional educators, trainers, technologists, are very focused on the needs of the productive workforce, of younger workers. Why? Because we say, oh, these are the ones that are going to add value to the economy. They are going to continue working for several years. They need to upskill, reskill, be competitive. They are the market differentiator. They make the difference in terms of competitive advantage. And we don't focus on the needs of older adults. So we are victims of stereotypes, such as, oh, older adults are slow, they don't really learn new skills, the old dog saying. They are unproductive, they are not engaged, they have physical, mental, emotional difficulties. And research has shown that that's false, that older adults can learn as much as younger adults if we provide the right training methodologies, the right resources, the right contexts for them to learn. So we essentially need to have here a shift of paradigm, seeing learning as part of the human experience, the entire human experience, beyond the needs of the market, beyond the needs of the workforce. Because whether we want it or not, that's our reality. And that's where we are heading. And that's where we ourselves as learners will find ourselves in the future. So let's move on to the second section now. What is different about this new context? I'm sure you're familiar with pedagogy, the discipline that studies how to teach children. We know that, this group of the population are compulsory learners, whether they want to learn or not. They are sent to school, they are dependent on teachers or trainers, they are subject-centered, whether you like it or not, you have to learn mathematics, history, science, geography, grammar. The entire learning experience is centered around the subject. That's pedagogy. Then we have andragogy, which is what we use at the workplace. Here learners are workers, they are voluntary learners. Usually they are not forced to learn. They want to learn because they want to be more productive, more efficient, they want to be more competitive, they want to be up to date on their skills. They are independent, they are self-directed, they know what they want to learn and they know where to find the content should they need to. And they are problem-centered. They want to fill skill gaps because they know that they have to solve problems and that they need to acquire the right knowledge, skills, and attitudes to be able to solve those problems effectively. And then, after pedagogy and andragogy, we have geragogy. What is geragogy? Well, geragogy is the discipline that studies the learning process of the elderly, of people who are 65 years old and above. And this learner is not a compulsory learner. Sometimes it's not a voluntary learner, but it is a crisis learner. Why? Because this learner is going through a major transition in their lives, where they are leaving the workforce or they are working in workplaces where they are facing stereotypes, discrimination, or lack of opportunities, or they are forced to learn or experience learning contexts that don't address their particular needs as older adults. So we can say that they experience learning as a crisis. They are interdependent because they depend on the trainer adapting the the learning experience to their needs, but they also have to provide inputs because they are not children and they are not young adults. They have very, very firm beliefs, values, convictions, and they need to be able to tell the trainer the value of this experience and how they can link that experience to what they want to learn. So we can say that they are experience-centered. They want to maximize the value of their vast experience. But they face challenges. They face very serious challenges. What are the challenges? Well, the challenges are physical. It's undeniable that older adults have biological constraints. They can have impaired senses like eyesight, hearing is not so good anymore. Also motor skills, are weaker. And this leads to emotional challenges. What are the emotional challenges? Well, because their body is changing, and they feel that it's not performing as well as it used to do in the past. Now they face lack of confidence, lack of motivation, low self-esteem. They are afraid of not learning fast enough. They are afraid of losing face, in front of their employers or their colleagues or their trainers. So they face emotional difficulties. And finally, they also have structural constraints. What is structural constraints? Well, they may not be given the opportunity at their workplace to apply what they've learned, or their circumstances and contexts deprives them of opportunities to apply this knowledge and to keep pace with technological transformations because they may be discriminated or they may just face ageism, in the workplace or in society at large. So this is the major challenge right now. What can we do about it? As experiential educators and trainers, we need to account for these elements, the principles of older adult learning, because research has shown us that older adults react differently to the learning experience, to the learning process itself. And therefore, we, as professional educators, have to adapt and account for these differences. So I have classified here the principles. We have first motivation. Motivation refers to the fact that senior learners are less likely to participate. They need more encouragement from the trainer. As I mentioned, they are very, very afraid of failure, and we need to provide them with constant positive feedback and encouragement. That's the first one. Then structure. We may assume that because they have lots of experience, we can just deliver very advanced or complex content, but it's very challenging for them to absorb and internalize those ideas if they are not structured in a logical sequence that goes from the most basic to the most complex. So we need to be creative enough to divide the content into manageable groups or chunks, so that they can easily absorb this knowledge and see how it relates to their past experience. So structure is very important, and we need to be very detailed in how we're going to structure this content. Then the familiarity. Well, familiarity here refers to the fact that we need to account for the long journey, the long learning journey of these adult learners, and not just introduce new context or new discoveries. In particular, when we're talking about technology, don't just introduce new technologies as if they had always been there, but try to link them to the knowledge that the learner already has, so that it seems to be familiar and it doesn't scare them because it's new. Because older adults are sometimes afraid of newness, because they feel that they are not up to date with technology and recent transformations. So generating a sense of familiarity is very, very useful for them. Then we also have here organization. Older adults tend to have difficulty organizing materials to help retention, because memory starts to decline, in particular short-term and working memory. So we need to organize the materials in meaningful ways. And if we don't organize the material, provide them with some learning tools so that they can organize the materials themselves in a meaningful way for them. So organization of the learning experience is very important. Here, the objective is, of course, to make it as meaningful as possible for them. Then we have the time. Learning time increases as we age, so it takes us longer to learn. So here, older adults prefer to be accurate than to be fast. So they'll take longer to process information, and we as educators need to account for that, to give them the time that they need. And then participation, they learn by doing. They don't learn by listening, they don't learn by memorizing, they don't learn as much by reading, they learn by having experiences that they can integrate into what they already know. So if we go and give a lecture, they will get very demotivated. But if we provide them with experiential learning activities, they will benefit from that greatly. So those are the elements. Now, very quickly, let's move on to the strategies to work with these senior learners based on these principles. First of all, make learning as practical as possible. Engage them, hands-on activities, that keeps them active. Not just as passive receptors of knowledge, but as experiential learnings that do something. Acknowledge the experience to motivate them, but also challenge them. Challenge them because they value their experience a lot, but they also have to be aware of the fact that it's not enough, that knowledge is being generated all the time and that we need to develop new skills, new competencies, and to be up to date. Then cater for lower energy and attention levels. So give longer breaks, allow them more time to process information and try to be patient with their pace. Address the lack of confidence by affirming their achievements, whether they are recent or past. This will motivate them, And finally, recognize that older learners are unique individuals. And this is of paramount importance because sometimes we say, oh, older learners, let's just put them in one group of older learners. And yeah, that's something that they have in common. But within this group of older learners, they also have diverse learning styles, personalities, backgrounds, orientations, experiences. So we also need to adapt based on their own individuality and not just pigeonhole them and say, oh, they are old, so they learn like that. No. Yes, they are old and we need to apply geragogy principles, but they are also adults who are unique, diverse, and that need to be recognized as such. So, to conclude, what can we make of all of this? What actionable insights can we take home? I hope that you have gone through your own reflection process and see how this can apply to your own case. But in general, I can just highlight here some key actions. The first one is that we need to rethink the stereotypes about aging and learning. Of course, older adults face challenges, but neuroscience has demonstrated that we human beings can continue to learn even if we are 90 years old and above. New brain cells can be created, new synapses are created, and age is not an impediment to learning. Learning is not a matter of age, but it's a matter of ability. So do not limit our learners because they've reached a certain age. We have to support them because that's where we are heading ourselves as well, right? And that's the global demographic trend. So we need to cater for the needs of that market. Realize that learning until the end of life is not only possible, but also highly desirable for individuals, for organizations, and for societies. Then expand your learning purpose beyond the workplace. I know we emphasize gaining new skills, to be more productive, more competitive, more efficient, but let's go beyond that, What's the purpose of learning beyond productivity at work? Think of yourself, as a human being that will be learning until your last day of your life. So why do you want to learn beyond retirement? How can you learn beyond retirement? What subjects would you like to learn beyond retirement? And think long term. Yes, the workplace is very important. Yes, we need to develop skills for that context, but let's think beyond that. Implement learning self-management, okay? Don't depend on what your employer wants to teach you, because whatever skills they develop in you are aligned with the business strategic objectives, not with your own individual aspirations as an adult. So think of it yourself. Manage your own self-learning just as you manage your own life. And finally, maximize your experience by finding active application. So whatever you learn, how can you apply it? Just like you apply it at the workplace, how can you apply it in life? Beyond your productivity and your competitiveness, how can you be a better human by learning more, applying more, and being more? That's the challenge that we face. So these are just some insights that I can share with you right now, but I hope you have more yourself, that this talk can trigger your thinking, long-term thinking about yourself as a lifelong learner. And that's all I have to share with you today. This is me, I'm Alma, and these are my contact details. You can always reach out to me, and if you've got any questions, comments, insights that you'd like to share, well, I'm very happy to listen to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez. What an interesting and timely topic. Just very, very, very briefly, what is the biggest challenge for organizations that want to develop their older workers?
Well, they face several challenges, but I'd say the biggest one could be the stereotypes, that they have on older adults, and the misconceptions, the discrimination practices that are very hard to eradicate, and the difficulties in integrating right now 5 generations in the workforce. So accounting for the needs of these different generations is a big challenge for organizations. But we can start by demystifying aging, and getting rid of all the stereotypes that are barriers to the implementation of effective older adult learning strategies. So the biggest challenge would be the mindset. That's what we need to start transforming. How we think about aging, older adulthood, and generationally diverse workplaces.
Thank you so much. This has been very, very incredibly interesting.